eventually, did you have to deploy to Europe or
No, we
at
went to
least
the Pacific.
Pacific.
I didn't go to Europe until 1947, and that was a pleasure cruise. We went to Northern Europe, Sweden.
Tell us about the Pacific, your experience.
Well, we were deployed to Midway in October of 1941. And so we were there when they sent the Admiral Crusoe to the Washington for some talking there along with the Russians, and that's then the war started. We had a squadron recall, at about around 6 o'clock in the evening. And next morning, we were advanced base, undisclosed location, indeterminate time. That was it. And report to the back to the air station immediately. And 6 o'clock next morning, we were in the air. And then the pilots told us that, well, we're going out to Midway. So we were there mid-October until
December 5th.
got back in 5th of December at Pearl Harbor, and the attack came off on the 7th. So everything was downhill or something from there, you know.
How did the what you saw on December 7th and 8th, 9th, the suffering, the injuries?
Well, I never
Or
did see anyone, killed or what have you. But I know one of the guys that I served with later on, Jack Hammett, who was a corpsman, second class over at Naval Hospital. He was doing triage there, and they'd mark them where what kind of treatment they needed or if they were dead. And one time he said he was shaking one guy and said, "Well, are you okay, Mac?" And the guy said, "Hammett, damn it, he's dead."
Oh, dear.
So, anyway.
Wow.
It was a busy time, but I know Jack was the only one that I knew that was a corpsman over at the Naval Hospital, and he was involved in taking care of the ones that were dead and injured after the attack, or during the attack and after the attack. But I don't know where to go from there, but anyway, they brought out new planes for us around the end of January and end of December, I guess it was. So the first part of January, we were headed for the Dutch East Indies. And we wound up at, our first flight in was from Darwin into Ambon, island of Ceram in the Macassar Straits. And that's what we call a cold turkey lane.
Because?
A PBY by itself was cold turkey. And so, it was, if we generally flew, maybe if there was a cloud layer somewhere around 10 or 11,000 feet, well, we tried to fly right underneath that in case they were spotted, we could sneak into it. But, because, PBY in the air there he's cold turkey.
That's funny.
Would you explain to me, it's cold turkey? What do you mean by that?
That means you're dead.
Oh.
You have no chance.
I see.
So anyway, it was so we finally, they pulled us all out of the Dutch East Indies and end of February, I think it was, because we were running out of planes. And so we lost ours at Ambon, the first flight in, and they caught us on the water when we landed.
The Japanese?
Yeah.
So, how close of a call was that? That was a very close call for you.
Yeah, they destroyed a plane. The only one injured in it was the enlisted pilot who was up in the bow firing his little, what we call a 30 caliber pea shooter. We had 50 calibers in the waist guns, and one on each side, and then a 30 caliber in the bow and a 30 caliber in the tunnel hatch. You could raise a hatch up there and swing out this little 30 caliber and talk it down, and the radioman generally manned that one. But we weren't caught in the air. We're just on the water.
When you were in this plane, were you doing radio duty?
Yeah. Yeah, you had that radioman, and then we also had, gun.
So you had to shoot the gun also?
Yeah. One time we were flying patrol early in the morning, and I was on the circuit, and there was a plane that had sighted some ships in the harbor. I forgot how many there were, but anyway, they were attacked by fighters, and then when they got within range of the anti-aircraft fire, well, the fighters backed off, and they dropped 2 bombs. They reported one hit and one near miss. And then when they got out of range of the anti-aircraft fire gun, well, the fighters jumped again, and right in the middle of a transmission, it quit. He was shot down then, or radioman was killed or something. But anyway, they lost. They were lost. And there was I don't know, one of the books. There was an article in it. One of the pilots that had been shot down. He had a date with this beautiful Dutch. I think she was a driver for one of the officers or something within the Dutch forces there. Said she wore a uniform, and she was a beautiful woman, and all the other guys were jealous of him, and so they finally had to tell her that she had a date with him, a dinner date, and then they had to tell her that he wasn't coming back. So yeah, I was on the circuit when they were shot down.
On the circuit, what is
Radio
that?
circuit.
Okay, you were doing your job.
Yeah, it was, on the same frequency they were on, and listening, copying the everything that was sent out. So it was, I don't know.
To handle something like that,
Huh?
to be in on something like that, you have to compartmentalize, because that's
Yeah,
traumatic.
yeah. So anyway, it was interesting times. But
How long were you in the Pacific then?
well, we came back. We rode to Mount Vernon back. The transport had been the SS Washington, and when the Navy took it over, they changed the name to Mount Vernon, USS Mount Vernon. We rode that back from Fremantle, I guess, around Perth, Australia, southwest corner of Australia, back to New Zealand. And then we headed east and figured, well, we're going through the Panama Canal, head up the Atlantic. And when we got about due south of San Francisco, we made a 90-degree turn to port. I guess they figured they were out of the range of most of the submarine patrols out there. They headed north, and we headed for San Francisco. And they'd had a near miss of a bomb I think somewhere around Singapore or someplace. They were bringing back 6,000 Aussies and New Zealanders, Anzacs, they call them, from Europe, North Africa. And they let them out, some at Perth and some around at Wellington, I guess it was. and rest of them. And some of our personnel had got aboard over around Perth. And so we headed east, and then when we got out of due south of San Francisco, we headed for San Francisco. And since they'd got this, kind of got the shaft, I guess, the prop bent or something or other, every time that screw would turn, well, it'd get a little bit of a hump there, you know. We all the way back to San Francisco.